Skorpekhs, the three-legged, sword-handed, big old meanies of the Necron world. Today, we're going to make some, and maybe learn a little about them too, because tragically, there's a gap in this army. Here, and also here. And you know what? We're going to fill it with Scorpekhs. Look, there's one on the cover. Let's start with the little Scorpekhs, and we'll cover their dads later. First off, they look amazing. Some of the best evil robots you can buy. Their only problem is these three poses are the only ones you get. So in a squad of 6 you'll notice models looking the same. But other than that, perfect. So how can we get our greedy little hands on them? Well, as of right now, it's the very end of 9th edition, so we've got a few options. On their own as a 3, with their little GIMP bot, they're $37.50 from GW, and 15% less from sites like Element Games. In the future, this will probably be the main way of getting them, unfortunately. But right now, we have access to the Elite and Command Edition starter sets, which are going to go away with 10th edition, so sorry in the future, because these sets give much better value than just buying a box of these 4 lads. Meaning, some people could buy the box and split it with a friend who likes Space Marines, or you can go on eBay and get them for around 20 squids, which is a good deal. Even I can work out that's nearly half price. While we're here, let's talk about plasmacytes. Now, plasmacytes won't really be in this video other than now. Since they're their own unit, you can only have 3, and so, for the sake of variety, we'll be using one of these from the Ophidian box, and one of these too. Probably this cool one. So sorry, plasmacytes. But we'll do you later, in a video with all the rest of the freaks. So this is what we got. There's the 3 finished ones I painted as my first 500 points from the Codex Combat Patrol, with their little plasmacyte friend. Then, another 3 from a second Indomitus, which is where this Scorpekh Lord came from, and a second in Sprue mode. And finally we got 2 lots of Imperium magazine, one from a subscription, and one from Smith's that I was lucky enough to pick up. Now shamefully, I've built these already to play in-game without the paint. I know this is a great dishonour, and I completely understand if you need to turn the video off now. No? Oh, thanks. So first things first, let's build a Scorpekh Lord. It's building time, and it's a big boy. In fact, it's the poster boy for the Codex. Look at him, all proud, with his 3 arms. Not sure why he has 3 arms. Maybe we'll find out as the video goes on, but probably not. I'm ready to build. No. Anyways. He's 2-legged, but really, he wants to be 3-legged. Ooh. Sometimes mould lines aren't that bad. Sometimes they're in a good spot. His 3rd arm, his gene stealery arm. Might have made a little error and snipped the wrong bit off, but hopefully it will just glue on over the top. Let's find out, eh? For an auspicious paint phase, we turn to the patron saint of paint, Dunk. Oh blessed Dunk, who art on YouTube, steady my hand so that we can give the Scorpek's the paint they need. And may your legally distinct motto sing throughout the heavens. Multiple, watered down layers. God, that was weird. Oh, nearly forgot to like it. Now we've got our blessing, we can start with the painting. First up, priming in lead belcher. Nothing fancy here, just stick them to a stick and spray them outside. Now we've got them all metally, we're going to get the slow steps out the way before we break them up into their batches. For me, these slow steps are gluing stuff like rocks and warrior bits to the bases, then putting a thin layer of astrogranite on each base, painting Mechanicus standard grey over the astrogranite, and Nuln oiling the whole base and model, making sure we keep our precious Nuln safe with the non-tipper over we made in the first video. These steps are usually annoying if you have to do them in each batch, as there's so much time waiting for things to dry, so we get them all out the way together. Then we can get into some real painting. For you, a second's passed, but for me it's been a week. We painted 8 of his siblings, friends, business associates. Now for the last Skorpekh, why don't we do something a bit different? Well, now I'll show you the scheme and a couple of the things I've learned along the way, which honestly is not much, you just slap paint on him. For this, we'll need the model we're going to paint, a pot of water, a place to put the paint, which I'm using this wet palette. This is just the cheapest one I could find off Amazon. Some kitchen roll for lots of different steps. Cheap stuff is generally better, but this one was on offer, so I snapped up the good blue stuff. Our paints, I keep all my Necron paints in one box so I don't have to remember anything, because I'm dumb. They go there. And then the final thing, a brush. For this, my favourite brush, this one. This one is beat up because it was used for all the warriors and for the last video. It's the Army Painter Wargamer Regiment brush. It's a triangle, that's all we need. So let's do some painting. But I did have one more thing in mind. Over this video we've been trying to understand our Scorpekhy friends, but to really do that we've got to walk a mile in their shoes. So I thought, what better way to do that than okay, so hear me out. This might look like someone's having a breakdown, which I don't think I am. Now, I don't own any swords, but I've got knives. So I can't have sword hands, but I can have knife hands, which is basically the same. Knives are just, you know, small swords, right? Now, only one of these is sharp, so it's just the thumb I've got to worry about. The rest are pretty much fine. They're basically butter knives. Except, I mean, they're not, but they basically are. I'm no dunk. I can't paint. So, get into the mind of a destroyer and make the tutorial a little bit more something. Knife hands. That's 2 birds with 1 stone. And killing 2 things with 1 thing, that's very destroyery. So that leads us to knife hands. It's actually kind of fun. So let's try it. Now, of course, we've already done a few steps that we covered earlier, but we'll be treating this as step 1. Oh, step 1. It's everyone's favourite step. It's Corvus Black. We take and we mix it around until it's a really good watery consistency. Now that we've got that, oh god, we make sure we've got a bit on our brush, but not too much, and we're good to go. Now, Corvus Black, for me, I put it on every bit of armour, so the arms, the legs, the chest, and also for me, I do the back of the head. Just like this. Ugh. And so easy. This is going surprisingly well. Now I'll cut back to when he's all Corvus Blacked. Okay, so that went mostly well. I learned a few things about the perspective of destroyers. Mostly that sharp things are, yep, still sharp. And for some reason it was slightly messier than usual. Got Corvus Black all over the place, but the longest step is done. And it's nice to get it out the way first, because next up, Incubi Darkness. We just put it over the shoulder and any melee weapons they might have. So once he's all covered in Incubi Darkness, he should look like, and there we go. But next up, Abaddon Black for his feet and some of the parts near the weapon. There we go, all Abaddon Blacked. Next up, it's the Corax White dry brush all over this base. And to do that, we'll need 1 dry bit of kitchen roll and a big dry brushy brush This one is. It's a medium dry from Games Workshop. And once most of it's off, and we feel like we're not getting any more off, you see how it dry brushes. And we essentially just do that over the whole base. Easily the quickest step so far, and the most satisfying. Although, I do breathe in a lot of the dust it kicks off. That doesn't matter. Now we can move on to the first gold. And we've got Retributor armor. Now for this we're going to do it on the face and on his little emblem on his chest. But also any of the heads. Now with the gold applied, that's all the big base colours done. So it may not look very good yet, but now's when it starts to come together. So we're going to go over Incubi Darkness again. Now once that second layer of Incubi Darkness is done, we can move on to our green wash. In this case, Coelia Green Shade. And green wash applied. Now this is a step we do still have to wait for. So while we're waiting for it to dry, why don't we do a deep dive in the lore and find out as much as we can about our three-legged friends. And then once we're wiser, we'll come back and finish this lad off. Now, where do we go when we want to learn about Warhammer things? That's right, the internet. Yes, I see. Ah, very interesting. Okay, so the internet has failed us, but we've still got the book, where there's a single paragraph on this page, and little bits underneath their pictures. Okay, so I'll just read those. So far we've been so negative, only concentrating on destroying. But why don't we ask, what are some other things that make them happy? They could be complex beings. It says here, they like long walks, a good book, hot chocolate. Oh no, sorry, that's wrong notes. It says here under likes, destroying. Yeah. I guess they're not that deep. Well, you know what? I think this has been so successful. We've got enough lore for a lore corner. You're a robot. You've been asleep for 65 million years. You wake up groggy, grumpy, rusty? But something's wrong. Your grumpiness doesn't go away. In fact, it grows into a rage. Something in your robot brain broke while you were asleep, and now all you know is that life is meaningless. You know, somewhere in the galaxy, something's alive, and that really ticks you off. So you hang out with like-minded robots and call yourself part of the Crimson Court for some reason. All that's left is to politely persuade a cryptek to replace your limbs with weapons. And hey, you're ready to destroy the galaxy. Thanks. Okay, let's finish off this tutorial, and we're going to go quick for the rest of the steps. Now we've got our dry Coelia green shade, we dry brush with Cyberite green onto those shoulders and weapons. I got a really cheap makeup brush that's worked perfectly for me, but now I can't find any more of it, so I've got to keep it safe. So following our standard dry brushing rules, we pick out the edges with Cyberite green. Next up, it's the second layers for 3 of the big block colours. We go Corvus black, then Retributor armour, and finally Abaddon black. At this stage, while we wait, I go over all the lead belcher that I've accidentally painted other paints on. So any Cyberite green or accidental Corvus black you got on them, this is the step where we clean all that up. Now, using precious Agrax Earthshade, we darken anywhere we painted Retributor gold, including the little faces on the base. While that dries, we do our first Corax white pass on all the little dots. The way I see it is anything that looks like it's powered, we give it some white. But don't worry, we'll be coming back to make these whites a bit brighter and to also finish off the eyes. One small step I always add is using Stormhost Silver as almost a really simple dry brush on the edges of some of the lead belcher. I wipe off most of the paint and then just rub along the edge, like a cheaty edge highlight. One of the final steps, we do a very light dry brush using our normal brush of Liberator Gold over the head and chest. Now for the scariest step, we steady our hand and put tiny little white dots of Korax white in his eyes and go over any of the white that needs another coat. And then the final, and in some ways most important step, we paint round the rim with Mechanica Standard Grey. And he's finished. We're now the proud owner of our final Scorpekh destroyer. I think they're my favourite thing to paint so far. They're big and chunky, you can do them in batches of 2 quite easily, and the poses don't have too many fiddly hidden bits inside them. They're great. But now let's look at them all together. Whoa, that's a lot of plastic. They take up so much space as well, I can't even light them. Okay, so thoughts. Each one took around 4.5 hours in the end, so 3 times longer than a warrior, which is how I measure time now in warriors. Ratings wise, they're good to build, fun to paint, and they look amazing on a shelf. I mean, it's only positives really. As a Necron unit, they are S tier in basically everything. But so far we haven't really talked about their rules. And they're destroyers. So what can they destroy? So we need something good for them to destroy. Let's try a big tough demon. And what's bigger and tougher than a Great Unclean One? Now, I don't actually have a Great Unclean One, but I do have this. So let's all flex our imagination muscle and pretend. One big squad of our lads. And as this is 9th edition, there's a lot of buffs we can give them. So let's go down the list. Plasma Sight, giving them +1 attack and strength each. My Will Be Done, to give them hitting on 2s. If we say they're Novok, they get +1 AP on the charge. And use the Novok strat to give them all +1 attack. If we say we're in the good command protocol, we get better AP and additional strength. And then we say there's Skorpekh Lord somewhere nearby to give them reroll 1s to wound. I think that's everything. So let's roll a lot of dice. Since we're already being so generous, giving them all the buffs, let's also say they make this charge. Now, our big unclean friend here is T9, 22 wounds, and for some reason, a 5-up invuln in melee. We've got lots of attacks to do, but first we'll start with our smaller sword hands. So 24 attacks, strength 7, 4 AP, and 2 damage, rerolling both hits and wounds of 1. Thanks to My Will Be Done, we hit on 2s, and with so many rerolls, basically everything converts to saves, and unluckily for him, he fails 5, meaning he takes 10 big damage. Now for the big sword hands. 10 attacks, strength 9, AP 5, and 3 damage each, which means we're winning on 4s rather than 5s. And this time he fails 4, so that's 12 damage, meaning he sadly goes back home to the warp, slightly less jolly. So that's a big old victory for the Scorpekhs. But Great Unclean Ones are famously frail, so let's try something a little more metal. A Baneblade. Okay, so maybe I don't have a Baneblade either. And to be fair, this one is not my best work. Let's see if we can make it better. There! Perfect. Okay, so it's the same as before for the Scorpekhs, except this time they're up against T9, 30 wounds, and a 2-up regular save. Now sadly, with no invuln, some of our attacks have such high AP, the Baneblade won't get any saves, taking 10 from the little swords, and a massive 24 damage from the big swords. Ugh. Well, that's another victory for the Scorpekhs. And all it took was the perfect setup and being in charge range. Nice. Now, I'm sick of talking about regular Scorpekhs, so why don't we move on to their dads, the Scorpekh Lords. Now let's get to know the Scorpekh Lord. I'm sure there's lots we can learn, right? Right? Well, one thing to know is they're kind of strange to buy. A lot of people, myself included, got theirs from Indomitus, and so you can still get one on their own on eBay for a real range of prices. Often around 20 quid. But eventually, when the Indomitus well dries, we'll be left with this Royal Court sprue. It's £75 for a real gaggle of weirdos. A Plasmancer, 2 Crypto Thralls, a Reanimator, and our boy, the Lord. But thankfully we don't need to think about this too much, and we can get on with building our own. So now we know how to get them, let's get a closer look. Well, they've got the look. 3 legs, sword hands, but also, what's this? A gun hand? Fancy. I love their look, and through this video, the Lords have really grown on me. One thing that's hard to get across is how massive they are. They tower above basically every other Necron, but I wonder how they are to paint. And while I'm painting, I'll gather up as much lore as I can. Oh, that was quick. And I might have forgotten to convert the second, like I did for the Plasmancers. So in canon, I've decided they're twins. I thought the regular Scorpekhs were my favourite thing to paint, but after doing these are easily the best. It's like painting Warhammer on a totally different scale. They're just massive, so it's so satisfying getting steps finished. I loved it. However, there's something I must admit. There's only one bit of lore I could find. A haiku, written by a lord, that I think gives some valuable insight into the way they think. And it goes, "Can't help but destroy. A game that's rigged from the start, with these swords for hands." Okay, so that was a lie. I couldn't find literally anything interesting about a Scorpekh Lord, so I made that up. It seems all we need to know is where you talk about normal destroyers, just put the word Lord in the sentence too. So, the Necron became a destroyer, turns into, the Necron Lord became a destroyer Lord. And that's it. Cool. But now let's rate them. To paint, they're the best. Fun to build too, but they don't seem to have lore really, and their rules as of 9th edition are really not very exciting. So, as an overall, Scorpekh Lords get a B. Thoughts now they're all done? I don't really have any. I liked them before, and if anything I like them even more now. I wish I'd had some great epiphany while painting them, but sadly, I just had a good time. Hopefully with 10th coming soon though, I can have each squad led by a Lord. That'll be fun. And really, I'm just excited to use them in any game, and I think they'll fit in well with the rest of the army. Like this. Oh, nothing better than finishing off a group of models. You know what though? I think I fancy a change for the next video.